All right. I love it. All right. So I'm gonna try to record the meeting. It's kind of a little difficult to record when you're in the breakout room, but we're gonna try anyway. Uh, so for those that are watching the recording, we're just talking about food because food seems to be a conversation that matters a lot. And it matters a lot because it's such an important part of culture and such an important part of identity. It's more than just just a meal. It matters. So when it comes to Mexican culture, uh, speaking of food and Mexican culture, I'm from Guatemala, but I have a lot of friends on Mexican culture, and I just thought this video was interesting about how food connects a certain type of food connects to their culture.
When it comes to spicy food and hot peppers, most Mexicans are addicted. We put chili on everything, even candy and
I
fruit.
don't understand that
Chile,
belief, honestly.
chamoy,
Basically, 99% of Mexicans feel like food is tasteless if it doesn't come with a little kick. This is why we love to eat peppers in every shape and form. We like them whole, in powder, and in salsa, of course. A taco without salsa is just not right. Think about it. Peppers have been part of the Mexican diet since pre-Columbian times. Some archaeological studies point out that peppers might have been the first domesticated species in Mesoamerica. But let's make one thing clear. Spiciness isn't a flavor, it's pain. So, are we masochists? Is there something wrong with us? Surely there's an explanation for this. Let's get scientific now. The chemical in peppers that causes the heat sensation is called capsaicin. This chemical stimulates the release of endorphins, which neutralizes pain. So it's not that spiciness that's addictive, it's the effect that it has on our brain. Let's say that eating hot peppers is a very Mexican way to experience pleasure through pain. So yeah, we are masochists.
Okay, so Mexicans are masochists, but just the idea that like I don't understand. Like I don't understand how why my Mexican friends love to put chili on everything, but it is a cultural thing, right? It's more than just like a preference. It's something that's in part of their culture. And as you saw in the video, it goes way back. It has roots in the history of Mexican people and other people in Latin America. Um, but and that's kind of a funny thing, right? To say I don't understand why someone does something like that. But when it comes to culture and like and our spaces as educators, sometimes those differences can be stark, and those differences in culture and those differences in cultures that you don't share, that can be problematic sometimes. Um, a little bit about kind of where this conversation kind of came from is where I grew up and my experience as a Latino student person. I grew up in Southgate, which is a city in southern Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a gigantic area of massive people. Southgate High School was a high school that was very big in the community of 100,000 people in Southgate, mostly Latino. And Southgate High School had around 4,000 students. And so did the other neighboring high school, in the Park High School, Bell High School. I mean, we're talking about a sea of people in this part of LA, and everyone was Latino there. We were that's kind of how I grew up. Everyone was Latino, sometimes bilingual, sometimes monolingual. Um, but here's the thing, though: 96 of the percent of the student body back in that time was Latino. But I would suffer to say, without finding accurate statistics, that only about 1 in 10 of our teachers were Latino. I don't remember. I only remember two Latino teachers in all of my time at the high school there. One of them was my French teacher, Miss Nada, and the other was my Mesa advisor when I was in high school. That's the only teachers I remember that were not white, or whatever. I don't know, not Latino. So, so it's these differences in cultures, right? Like, um, can be challenging, right? And that's a challenge a lot of us sometimes face. A lot of teachers face, right? Students that don't look like or identify with you. In other words, they look at you and they don't look like anyone that they know or anyone that they intimately know, part of their families or their friends. So immediately you already have some. It's really problematic, right? They're gonna come in with a conception of you that is maybe not accurate, but it's just that's the conception that they have. When I had a teacher, most of them, especially for math and stuff, they were all white. And I had this conception of like, okay, everyone that knows math, I guess, is white, and they're gonna be telling me what to do. Um, and sometimes it's not that difference. Maybe it's the difference in values, right? You have students that don't have the same values that you have, right? They don't eat the same stuff that you eat, right? They don't put chili on everything. And I put as you know them because sometimes they do share values with you, but just in a different way. They might value family, for example, like you value family. The importance that you put on your faith, uh, but they might not do it. They might see it a little differently or apply those values differently. And sometimes students that just don't enjoy or like what you do, and that's very obvious, right? I'm in my 40s, right? I obviously my interests are not the same as my kids, but that matters though. It does matter in the classroom. When we don't share things like that, or they don't like what we do, right? We don't dress like they do. uh I still haven't worn a pair of Crocs in public. I just can't do it. But it seems like that's how kids want to wear nowadays. Of all things, right? They wear Crocs with their pajama pants. I don't even understand. Um and sometimes they don't speak the same language, right? That we do. Literally. Like in where I when I grew up, a lot of us spoke Spanish or knew Spanish or Spanglish, and our teachers didn't. There was so already there's like a clear divide, right? Unintentionally, without you even saying or doing anything, there's already that divide. But nowadays, these kids speak languages that, I mean, my goodness, they're using all these slang words that I don't even know. They talk in three letters. They have a 1 minute attention span because of TikTok. So there's these differences. So when you have these differences, right? Especially if you have these cultural differences, how do we create a culture of inclusivity with with the kids that just don't look like you or they just don't dress like you think they should be dressing? And then and again, all of us want to think that we're like, oh yeah, we accept everything, but you're trying to teach these kids the Pythagorean theorem, man, and then they just. I mean, how do you create this culture of inclusivity, especially in STEM? A STEM is a world that isn't inclusive in the college and in the professional realm. So how do we do that with our kids, right? Well, first of all, let's peel back a little bit. Culture, right? So what is culture? We're not, most of us are not sociologists. Most of us are not. We're all STEM people, right? Um, if we had a sociology class, we kind of just like, we didn't even go to that class because we went to our math and engineering classes. But what is culture, right? Let's peel it back. The Oxford Dictionary defines it as the custom, art, social institution, achievements of a particular nation, people, or their social group. So the idea that any social group, any group of people, could be a nation, has particular customs, arts, and social institutions and achievements that define them. If you look a little deeper into culture, you look at something like this culture wheel. So, in other words, culture is more than just those little bullet points. It's a lot of things. It's the way that that culture, that group of people see community, the way that they value knowledge and pass on stories, their language. Language is a big part of culture, right? Traditions and rituals that you have in that culture, techniques and skills that are valued, tools and objects, arts, right? That's when music comes at and other artisanal things. Food and drink is a big part of culture. And it's interesting working with kids, right? Like, and why we have to, be cognizant, right? Like, sometimes we think we're making fun of some as individuals, right? We're making fun of something that we don't think is a big deal, but for someone in another culture, you putting down their food or not accepting food from them isn't is you're already devaluing their culture, right? By doing something that you think is that simple, right? Um, I had a project once when I taught Spanish for a semester, and kids would bring me things from different parts of their different countries and stuff like that. And for me not to accept that food or not want even want to taste it would be insulting for them. I think, um, because it's part of the culture. It means something, right? Just like language, when you put down language, right? Like, oh, we don't, our kids don't speak Spanish in school, because yeah, I know it's about education, but that's their culture. That's part of who they are. And to dumb down things like that, that's when we get in trouble with our kids, right? Um, just to condense it again, and just to something that we could understand. If you this time more of a corporate view of culture, right? Like it's the habits, traditions, and behaviors, that people have, distinguishes us, right? For better or for worse, it distinguishes us. But know this: this is the kind of key takeaway from this whole culture discussion: is the fact that every classroom, every school has its own culture. Can't get away from that. Whether you like it or not, when a kid walks into your classroom, they get engrossed in whatever culture you created in your classroom or in your school. A lot of times when we say about culture, we focus more on the school culture, right? And every school has a culture. Believe it or not, there's expectations kids have. There's things that norms that schools have. So just a little bit of look into school culture, because that's a big part of what we do, right? Well, being cognizant of that and how powerful that could be.
What do you think of when you think of an extraordinary high school? Top-notch academics? Definitely. Lots of interesting electives? Sure. But there's something else that's equally essential, harder to spot, and not as common as it should be. Schools need to be places where kids feel positive and safe. Places where every student feels they belong. Schools with positive culture have strong policies that address bullying, inclusion, and diversity. But policies aren't enough. The best test of a school's culture is to talk to the students.
The community, it's very diverse. You have different cultures and different types of traditions and stuff, but altogether it's a nice community because people here are respectful and, they're very nice to each other.
You also want to see how they act. Students look happy and at home. They're comfortable voicing their ideas.
Find more than one people, like all the migrants together, is more powerful than just one person making a change.
In a school with a positive culture, you see the celebration and acceptance of all kinds of students. Whether an academic enthusiast, an athlete, an artist, whatever culture, gender, or personality, there's an acceptance and appreciation of everyone.
So the idea is that school culture matters, obviously, right? And sometimes we can do a lot to influence our school's culture, and sometimes we can't. As teachers, as educators, the culture you can influence is the culture in your classroom. So how is this culture in your classroom created? Well, it's obviously created through what the established norms, values, and expectations are, right? All of us know that from Classroom Management 101, about setting up norms, values, expectations for our classrooms, right? As much as sometimes a lot of those things are meant to create so you can manage your students, and there could be an order of things. It creates the culture of the class, right? It creates what the kids can look forward to in your classroom. It creates the way that kids describe your class and describe you. There are visuals representations usually of these items, right? And things that are valued by the modeled by the teacher. If a lot of like certain words or certain things or certain behaviors, right? Sometimes sometimes they're seen, and sometimes they're modeled by the teacher themselves, and they usually don't exist independently of the curriculum, right? In the sense that you're not gonna you have your norms, values, expectations. You have your content. Obviously, it influences how you present that content and how that content is shown. And I would even say it's an asset It should help the content of your classroom or what's happening in your classroom. And here's the thing though, when you bring MESA into your school and to your space, you bring a program and you bring that program's culture, because MESA has a culture. MESA has a culture that has norms, values, and expectations that are important to MESA and have been important over the last many years. And the idea is to bring those into your classroom and make them part of your classroom culture. So what is or should be that MESA culture, right? What should be those norms, values, and expectations? That's the whole point of this little talk before we set you free to talk amongst each other. So what should, what does that look like, right? Obviously in your classroom you have this culture that you set for your kids when they come every day. How should MESA influence that, right? So let's talk about some norms and cultures for MESA before we kind of have more of an open discussion, okay? So let's talk about some norms that every MESA that really define the MESA culture or MESA classroom, right? And again, none of these lists are non-exhaustive, right? There's just a few things that I think are worth highlighting as educators of what our classroom should look like. A norm in our MESA classroom consists of constant encouragement and support. It's a place where kids feel valued and where they feel safe, where we encourage the students, where we support them. It's a place where kids feel like they can do things and people will praise them for it. A lot of classrooms I remember growing up weren't like that. It was like they were places where you felt like you were on pins and needles. If something went wrong, you were just like the end of the world. And that's another thing that I think is a huge norm, is accepting failures, right? That failure is part of our culture. I know that sounds weird, huh? Doesn't that make sense? But in the engineering world, failures is just, you might not even want to use that word, right? It's basically a learning opportunity, right? What this is. In other words, kids feel safe even if they do something wrong. They feel like this is a place where they can continue to learn and get better. That you accept failures, right? It's a huge part of the MESA coach of MESA, our norms, right? And perseverance, right? Because our projects are not easy. A lot of our MESA projects take a long time to do, and to be able to have this attitude of not giving up, right? And we can model that as educators, because if we don't give up on our students, they're not going to give up on themselves. And accountability and owning up to the work that they do, that the projects belong to the students, and that they're accountable for the work that they do. The worst thing you could do for your MESA kids is to do the work for them. We're the type of teacher that wants kids to compete, and you want them to win so badly that you build everything for them and you do everything for them. You need to get out of MESA right now, because that's not what MESA is. MESA is about kids learning to be accountable. And that means that they do their projects and their own work, and they own up to their work. And we guide them in doing that. A big part of that is how we see failure, though. Because I think some kids are so afraid to fail, so afraid to do something wrong, to create that culture. So let's hear a little bit about how that culture can be created real quickly.
Was anybody a skater back in the day? Any skaters out there? Yeah, I was, okay? I had long hair when I had hair, okay? It was glorious, even though I shaved underneath. I had Jinko jeans, a nice chain, okay? Okay, Stussy shirt, no fear hat. I was ready to go, all right? But I talk about failing all the time with the mindset of what it's like to be a skater. And we show our students and our teachers this video all the time. Yes, this guy is trying something that's pretty hard. He's dressed inappropriately. And we were talking earlier about how we had to mute it because he's cursing left and right, guys. We had to mute it, all right? Even for an adult group here, we had to mute it. But I want you to watch this clip and look at a couple different things. Number one, he is trying something that is difficult. When you're at the skate park and you're trying something that is difficult and you fall down, guess what people don't do? They don't laugh at you. They don't call you a failure. In fact, if we took the mute off of this video, you would hear his buddies and the people behind the camera saying, "Get up, you got this, one more time, get after it." The culture of skating is that you should try things that are very difficult and continue trying, even if it hurts, okay? Even if there is failing involved. What does that look like in schools? Do we try more than one time to succeed at something? When something doesn't go right the first time, do we try again and again and iterate and get better? And so on the 16th time, he's still falling. And it's not here until the 17th time where he finally goes, I got it, okay? He finally figured it out. And so 17 iterations of him getting better until he lands that. And we feel good, right? We're like, we didn't want to see him fall anymore, okay? But I show this video because I want you to think about failing like a skater. That if you go after it knowing that you're not going to get it the first or second time, and it may take 18 times, you may have a moment where you're riding off in the sunset in some weird alleyway, okay? You may have that moment. Learning, it turns out, is an iterative process. It really is an iterative process. And the design process is transforming. It transforms how we learn, unlearn, and relearn, which are the things that we have to do all the time, not just as educators, but as anybody in this ever-changing world that is exponentially changing.
So I guess we gotta have MESA skate parks where when students don't get something wrong, it's okay. And we cheer them on and we support them until they have uh, some success, right? That's what the classroom should be like. That's what a MESA classroom should be like. One where kids are so encouraged and supported that even if it takes them 20 times to get that glider to fly, we're gonna be behind them and supporting them and not making them feel less. What are some things MESA values? Well, we value critical thinking, something that is always talked about, right? It's like, oh, kids need to learn to think critically. Well, that's something that we do in MESA, right? Which is challenges and the activities that we have. We're teaching the kids to think beyond themselves. We're teaching kids to be in. We value ingenuity. You know, kids that are creative and can think and can, for goodness sakes, use the little imagination they have left, right? We value teamwork. We value students that can work with other students, work with each other. This is something that's so important in the MESA world. Why we have groups of students that do projects and not individual, because we know that that dynamic that they build is so important that for their future and for their careers. And we value projects and problem-based learning. That's kind of the basis of what we do in MESA, right? And we value that. That's important. The projects are important. They matter, and they mean something. Because to some people that are outside of our classroom, a kid building some kind of bridge to sustain a certain amount of weight, they might not think that's a big deal. That's like, oh, what are they building bridges? What are they playing with paper and stuff? But we value that. We value those activities. We value those projects. That's important to us because we know that of the amazing learning that happens. And what are some of the expectations, right? Of that we expect. Well, we expect that students can think. We know that behind that screen, behind that sometimes awful attitude some kind of kids come in with BFI, or that the eye rolling that we get, that we know that they can think, and we know that they can only think, but they can achieve. We know that they can do great things. I know this should be obvious, right? But come on, so I think as teachers, if you've been doing this for a long time, I think we lose sometimes the sense of what we're doing, and we lose the faith in our kids. It's a hard system that we work in, right? But kids can achieve. They can do they can do more than they even themselves think that they can do. They can problem solve. They can solve the problems. They can do it. They can. Our solution isn't always best. I mean, come on, our minds are. I mean, let's face it, our minds are old, man. Our minds are worn. Our minds are worn, and some of y'all have worn your minds out through other things, right? But um, our minds are worn. The mind of a 12-year-old, 14-year-old, the malleability, right? The potential to come up with amazing ideas. They have more potential than we do to come up with ideas. That's just the reality, right? That's what science will tell you, right? I mean, my 46-year-old brain, there's a lot more room for growth in the 12-year-old brain. right? They can come up with great ideas. They can solve the problems. And that's when we have NEDC. We see amazing solutions. That probably is, I wouldn't have thought of that, but they could because they're young and they have potential. And they always surprise us, the kids. And we expect surprises. We expect that idea that no one could think of, or that project that why would they even do that? And it actually ends up working. They surprise us. They can even like the kid that no one can work with, right? You know the kid, right? The one that has been causing issues throughout their entire school career. That kid can surprise us and put in this environment where they're solving problems. And students definitely have value, right? We expect that they have they have value, they have worth, they have agency, and it's all about them. It's all about the students, not about us. We're not. This isn't Little League. This isn't a dance off in Vegas where we go over there and get all crazy in these competitions. It's not about that. Whether your kids win or lose, it's not about that. If you're that competitive, just stay in that weekend circuit. Go travel around with your groups. If you're going to be that competitive and crazy and act stupid in front of your kids, no, it's not about that. It's about them learning. And if they learn, and if they grow, and if they do things beyond themselves, whatever happens at a competition happens. Because it's not about winning or losing. Because let me tell you, are the kids going to win all the time in life? No. They're going to lose a lot in life. That's just how it is, right? They're going to have setbacks. They're going to go to college and take a class that they think they can't pass. We need to teach them to learn from those failures, from those mistakes, to persevere. And we have to do it in a way that is caring and that shows that we care for what they do. And before we go into our discussion here, leave you with this, right? A great MESA classroom is one where, goodness gracious, kids are doing things, kids are active, and the teacher it just is sitting back and watching the magic happen. What a place to be, right? But I think that if you apply some of these ideas, if you start by creating that culture, by recognizing what MESA can be and should be, you'll get to a place where your kids are just like our speaker was saying in our keynote, right? Like the kids will start telling you what the rules are. What the kids are start telling you what they want to do, and that's where we want to be. Really, honestly, as MESA teachers, we've taught our kids well when they can get to that point. So now it's time to reflect and share, because this is a part of collaboration here. So I got 3 questions, and I'm gonna share the slides with you in a second in the chat. But the idea is like we have 3 questions up there. You know, what are that for you to answer the different slides in the Google Slides? What are some of your successful norms, values, expectations in your class? I talked about some of the things that I think are important, that we think are important here for some of our teachers here to use as norms, values, and expectations in their class, in their club or class. What are some of the ones that you use? How do you connect with students that don't share your cultural identity? Again, that's kind of where we started this conversation, right? How do you connect with those students? And how can you improve your own classroom culture? So let me go ahead and share the link in the chat, and then we can start sharing some ideas in that uh, Google Slides presentation, and we'll come back and we'll have more of a discussion. So we'll give us all like maybe like 5 minutes or something like that to share some ideas in those Google Slides, and then we'll come back. And thank you for continuing to share. And we'll give a few minutes. We still have time in the presentation, so definitely take some time to think about some of your responses, so we can share with each other the things that we do. So we'll give a few more minutes. Continue to entertain you with this video game music. Okay, as we continue to share, any thoughts on just kind of this conversation about culture in the classroom, and just before we talk, share what was shared on the Google slides. Any thoughts? Because there's enough of us we can unmute. And what do y'all think about this conversation about classroom culture? How important is it?
Hi, so I'm Carolina here. I work mostly in um, Eastern Portland area. So it's a area that has a lot of minority groups that have been pushed away from the main Portland area of Oregon and kind of have been solidified into small little areas. So it's great that I get a very culturally diverse school systems and different districts. There are a lot of different languages, countries, cultures, heritage background within a classroom. Even within like the Spanish speaking community, there are so many different dialect because there are so many different countries and places represented. So I think opening that up first to get to know the students, let them share part of their culture and their heritage and their traditions. So also the kids can see that there's different ways. There's no right or wrong way to speak Spanish. There's no right and wrong way to have that cultural background. Because what I did find in the beginning before really diving into these kids' cultures amongst themselves, but they would create even quarrels of who was right and who was wrong, and like, all right, well, your Spanish is incorrect because this is how we do things, this is how we say things. And like, no, all of them are correct. They're all from different places and they have different dialects and they have different histories that change the language or that change the culture. And it's important for us to learn those differences so we can be more open. And not only am I learning from the kids, but the other kids are learning from each other, and creates a space of empathy and understanding.
Yeah, I think what you said about having the kids be able to talk, and it's an open space for them. It's a free space for them to be able to talk about themselves and what they value. Um, giving students voice from the very beginning of the school year, it matters so much. It matters so much for the kids because sometimes some of the kids I work with sometimes, or even teachers, like no one's ever even asked them about 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 their any aspects of their culture, at least in a respectful way, right? So it's great to create that environment. It's great for as educators also be interested in it, right? And to actually listen, and to actually show that we care and we value what they're saying. And even if we don't understand it, or even if it might even go contrary to our beliefs and our own cultures, but that we let the students express, and we give them that opportunity. Well,
They're
thank you for
usually
sharing that.
very excited to share that aspect. They're like, wow, you actually care?
It
You
goes a
want to
long way,
know?
right, for students,
Yeah.
because anyone else with any other comments on just this conversation on culture and your classroom and things like that. I've been sitting here listening. We can talk now. Well, I can get things going by just sharing what you're sharing. All right, let's see. Share what you shared. So here's some things that you shared. Okay. So share ideas. Teamwork. Teamwork is Teamwork does a lot of good. You know, and it's not just because we have to have it for our comic, but teamwork does a lot of good for students to get to know each other. And sometimes when they don't know each other from before being in your class or in your club, teamwork does a lot. It's and then the bonds that they form sometimes with some of these teams, it's pretty amazing. Especially like NEDC, these kids really bond, and we're also teaching that that's what they're gonna do at the college level, right? When they do group projects there, when they do senior design projects at the college level, they're gonna bond, and it's good to teach them those skills to be able to do that. See what else we have here. We have the STEM
Hey,
push.
Carlos.
Sorry, those are pretty good norms.
Yeah, I was going to jump in on that one, Carlos.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for folks that may not be aware, so there are several MESA programs that are part of this initiative called the STEM Push Network. So it's a collaborative of pre-college STEM programs that are working together to try to, do very similar missions to MESA, right? Increase the number of people of color that are pursuing STEM. And we use these norms in a lot of our meetings in the work, because we have people from across the country doing different kinds of work, nonprofits, universities, CEOs of their organizations, those kinds of things. And then these are just really, these have been really helpful, and I think a lot of these things, especially with, right, we're all adults, and conversations get heated with students, especially we're working with middle school and high school students, right? Got a lot of hormones going on. So if you're establishing some of these things with critiquing ideas and concepts, not people, right? So it's like we can have a conversation, and I could say, I don't like that idea, rather than that's dumb, right? And they like, you're attacking the person. So I think I really like some of these because it sets some of those things up that allow for constructive work to happen and avoid things, because when they're working on these projects, for some of the students it can get really personal for them, depending on what project it is, right? Or they're really attached to their own ideas, so then to push back on that or ask them to think how they could change that is difficult at times. So that's why I like some of these norms. I just thought I'd share that real quick.
That, and I like that norm too, because sometimes I honestly think that we have to teach our kids how to disagree each other in an agreeable way. Because that's definitely not being modeled by certainly by what society is showing them. It's not being modeled. Um, and to learn to do that and to practice doing that that's a pretty good skill, along with the other skill ideas that this is going to be a place where we're going to respect each other. We're going to a space where we can apologize if something goes wrong. We're not going to harbor resentment. We're not going to harbor those things, because if it like, and it's so important, because if you get these things right, these projects, that all of that comes in. So it's so much. It's such a better environment for all that work that you do. I like what they put down in the comments here. The temp check at the beginning of the day. I like that. Um, you're showing that you respect your students when you're doing something like that, right? You're showing them that uh that you're thinking about them, you know, and that's important, because as educators we know that some days are better than others. And sometimes something happens in the community or something happens in this world, and kids are going to be distracted. And it's good to recognize that instead of trying to come against that. Um, well, awesome. These are great ideas, and yeah, this is for all of you that are on here. This is all for you, ideas for you to keep and to share. Um, It's yeah, it's a great space to to share. Kids love talking about their music. Oh, their music. Oh my goodness, I don't even understand it. I just don't. I don't understand it. I don't. I don't get it. I don't understand. The merits of some of the music that the kids listen to. But I don't have to understand it or like it. If they like it, if the kids like it, what the kids like it. Like Taylor Swift. I mean, I can't. I know already that I can't say anything bad about Taylor Swift. Even if in my mind I'm thinking, overrated. I can't say anything. That's important to the kids. If it's important to them, we need to pay attention to. It's just how it goes, right? Oh yeah, saying names. Yeah, I've met many students that when you actually pronounce their name correctly, or take the time to, it's maybe the first time that someone had actually tried to do that, and not call them by some pseudonym or some abbreviation. Just completely mispronounce their names. That's really cool. A couple more things, and then I know we're gonna rejoin the main session. Um, well, I think yeah, we gotta have allow room for growth, right? For students to have some control about what they're doing. I think these projects let us do that. I have teachers that the way they run these projects is they have checkpoints with the kids periodically. The kids know that every Friday they're gonna have a checkpoint, but during the week when they're working on these projects, they have some freedom, right? They're given some agency to work on their projects, but they know that on Friday, we're gonna be looking for XYZ, and you better have that done. And if you don't, there's consequences, right? I had a teacher that would do that every week, but when they're working on a big project. Uh, yes, and this is I like that. It is even culture. It's an iterative process, right? And that should be part of our culture because that's part of what engineering and these projects are. It comes in parts. Um, or even students are part of building the culture in their classroom, right? In the classroom, I know teachers that sometimes ask their students, "What's important to you?" And they have conversations that they kind of build a shared uh, list of values for their classrooms. And I know that sounds kind of pie in the sky for us that are science engineer, math teachers, but I know it sounds like no, but wow, if you get that culture right, when you're trying to teach them these hard concepts that are difficult to navigate, if you at least have the culture right, the mindset right, the attitude right, it makes them so much easier to teach things that are difficult. And validating students, right? You validate student dreams. You validate them by letting them share those things with you and with each other and in the classroom to validate what they want to do and not look down on what they want to do. I've so many, I've heard to so many students that have these dreams that are like, okay, you want to be a professional athlete and a professional TikToker. Okay, good for you. Like, yeah, okay. My mind is thinking I want to, come on, what are you talking about, man? Get with it, But no, we value that, right? Maybe the student becomes your classroom's official TikToker, creating some Mesa TikToks, to reach our kids. Whatever, again, uh, the attitude of valuing and not devaluing, right? Okay, so awesome. So let's wrap this up because we're gonna be. I'll give you a few minutes as we go back to the main general session. So just yes, and I have 50 tabs open. So thank you again just for engaging in this conversation about STEM Mesa classroom culture. Hopefully, we'll give you some ideas about what that could look like and some thoughts about what to do. A lot of takeaways from the feedback, great ideas for you to use. Um, a great thought, and again, just to value certain things. I think the respect of students, the ability for them to share, ability to recognize failure and to grow from it. I know sometimes as math science teachers, we like, that's not something we want. We think of doing, but it'll make our learning so much easier when kids come into a safe classroom where they can learn and a lot's expected of them. So have a great. We have a couple minutes, and then they're gonna kick us out, and we're gonna go back into our general session. So you want to take some moment to stretch? Oh
Hey, Carlos.
yes.
I was just saying thanks, but
No,
I'm
no, no.
still
Thank
not
you
at it.
for joining us. And oh, coach, it's so important to have a good, welcoming classroom. And those are the teachers I remember, the ones that when you walk in, it was like they could teach you so effortlessly. I mean, it was just amazing, the teachers I had that could do that. That you didn't feel burdened, when you walked in, and that was a cool thing. All right. We only have about another minute, and then we're getting kicked out, and then reassigned, as it were. Are your teams ready for next week, man? Are you guys driving, or are you guys flying over to San Diego?
Oh, we're flying. We're flying. We're all leaving different. Well, and like one of our teams is from Nogales, so down by the border, and then the other one's from the Phoenix area. So two different areas that they're coming from as well. And then of course staff that's coming in earlier and leaving later than the students. So everybody's flying in.
It's a short flight, at least.
It is for my teams. I was able to get them direct flights, but for Bill and I have to be there early on Monday. There's no early direct flights, so we have to like fly to somewhere else and then have a layover and then fly to San Diego.
Carlos, do you want to stop?
Oh, really? Hey, Beatrice.
You want to stop the recording?
Yes, I should do